All right. Hello, everyone. Thank you for coming to my. Oh, hey. Thank you for coming to my session. I don't really have a lot of slides today. I just have mostly demos. I'm going to show you a bunch of things. My name is Abdel. I'm a cloud developer advocate at Google. I'm actually based out of Sweden. And I co-host a podcast called the Kubernetes Podcast. So I mostly do Kubernetes. But today we're going to look at, it was just like an interesting challenge for a weekend I had. It was like, how can I figure out all the ways you can deploy a website to Google Cloud? And then this is essentially the talk, right? So I'm just going to show you all the ways we're going to do it, and we're actually going to show you how we do it for the podcast itself and how much it costs us. So the thing with Google Cloud is that we do have a lot of runtime environments, right? Like you're probably all familiar with this, starting with VMware Engine if you're more like on the enterprise side of things, all the way until Cloud Functions if you're more on the serverless functioning side of things. I do mostly work with Kubernetes, so that's kind of my jam. But like all these options, you can technically host a website on those things, right? I think what's interesting is the fact that there is like a very, very simple, very easy way to host a website on Google Cloud that not a lot of people maybe don't know about or don't talk about that often. And I'm going to show you that one. And it's essentially very stupid. It's stupid in the sense that it's very simple. It's essentially cloud storage and load balancers. So let's start with that. I want to show you that first. So if you can switch to my demo. Perfect. So you all know Hugo. It's there is a tool called Hugo for generating websites, right? For generating static websites. So I have generated like a Hugo website here. So that's basically how the structure looks like typically. And so I have a very simple website here. This is the configuration file. So the website is hosted on this domain here, which I'm going to show you later. Notice that I have HTTPS. So I have SSL certificates, domains, all that stuff. Yeah, I have a very simple website, like a Hugo, like a hello world kind of website. So I can just do like a Hugo serve locally, which will load up. Sorry, I have to go into the actual folder. Next, and then I can do this. And that will just load up like a local host. So if I click on this local host here, this is like a very simple website, right? So, usually if you are developing static websites using Hugo, you run the server locally, and then you just modify your server, and then you see the changes. So if I go here, and I say, hello, Vegas, and just save this file, and then, yeah, it's just already updated. So this is all good. This is locally. But now, how do I put this behind a domain, right? Like a www.mycompany.com. So I basically have a Google Cloud Storage bucket. So I created the bucket called Next24 Static Website. I'm going to show you how I upload the content, the files, into the storage bucket in a second. But the other thing I also did is I created a load balancer. So we have a bunch of different types of load balancers in Google Cloud. Usually, people use Google Cloud load balancers in combination with either virtual machines or Kubernetes clusters or whatever. But Google Cloud load balancer can have many types of backends. And one of the types of backends, you can basically put a static GCS bucket, like a Google Cloud Storage bucket, as a backend to that load balancer. So I have a load balancer here that I created. I created it manually. Of course, you can do infrastructure as code, Terraform, or Pulumi, whatever you want. And so, so I have a bucket, I have a load balancer, it has a static IP, it has a certificate which is managed by Google. If you're a web developer, the last thing you want to do is manage domains and manage certificates. These are managed certificates, and the domains are managed also by a different provider. So if I look at this load balancer here, I go to, yeah, so as a backend, I have a bucket. The bucket is the Next24 static website, so that's the bucket I showed you earlier. And then I have Google Cloud CDN. So the interesting thing also here is that once you start using Google Cloud load balancers, there is a lot of features that get enabled that you can leverage. CDN is the simple one, so caching content. is a very simple feature, but you can do something like IIP, Identity Aware Proxy. So if you need your application to have authentication in front of it, you can use Identity Aware Proxy. If you need some sort of security mechanisms, so for example, your website is only access. There is an interesting thing happening since GDPR. GDPR in Europe, the data protection law happened in Europe. That was like 3 or 4 years ago. And since that time, I started noticing that a lot of American websites, and especially fast food chains in the US, they actually just block Europe. So if you try to if you are in Sweden and you try to log into chickfila.com, it doesn't work. It says we're not GDPR compliant, so we're not gonna allow you actually to check our website. And usually the way they do it is that they have a WAF, a web application firewall. They have a way to know if you're coming, from where you're coming, from which region in the world, and they can block you. So in our case, with Google Cloud Load Balancers, you can just stick Cloud Armor in front of it. And with Cloud Armor, you can filter users based on destination. You can say only allow US, only allow Europe, only allow UK, whatever, right? So this is a very simple example. So, so then if I go to my domain here, which is next24.abdels.me, so that's my website. So this is my actual website. So the content behind is hosted on Google Cloud Storage. There is a load balancer in front of it. Now, if I want to make changes, I basically can just modify my websites, and I can just do Hugo, run Hugo, the actual application, the actual command line, which generates all the static content. And then I can just upload that static content to the bucket using, if you're familiar with Google Cloud Storage, you would typically use GSUtil. We are actually, I don't know how many people know this, but we are replacing GSUtil with the command line under G-Cloud. So you do not need a separate command line to interact with Google Cloud Buckets anymore. You can just use G-Cloud for all of that stuff. And so the command line is essentially G-Cloud Storage, and I'm just going to run an rsync. And so what I'm syncing is the public folder. So Hugo, the way it works is that you have the templates, you do your modifications, you run Hugo, it generates the static content inside the folder called public, and then all I have to do is upload the content of the public folder to my remote bucket, right? And so if I go here now and I upload this, it will just hello Vegas, right? So very, very simple. So the reason I'm showing this is because I think it's a very, very effective way of actually hosting static websites. So if your company has a website that says who you are, what's your phone number, what's your email, what's your address, you don't really need to sophisticate things and complicate things. You can just use a bucket plus load balancer to host these things. I'm going to show you a very real example. So for the podcast we do, the Google Cloud, the Kubernetes podcast by Google, we have a website, of course, called kubernetespodcast.com. I can show it here. It's this one. So everything on this website is static, including so we don't use Google Cloud to host the MP3 files. So the audio files themselves are hosted in a different environment, and they are, the reason why we're doing this is because we want analytics. We want to be able to see how many people downloaded episodes and stuff. But everything else, so the static content, the HTML, the show notes, for example, if you go here, you have all these notes. You have the transcript of the episode itself. This one doesn't have transcript yet. I should upload it today. But here, for example, you have the transcripts. All of these things is inside the bucket. So I'm actually going to show you how much it costs us. But before I do that, let me go back. So we have 222 episodes, static content, load balancer, domain, SSL certificate, all that stuff. Can anybody tell me how much do you think it costs per month to host all of this? Just shout a random number. $5. 50? $1.50? Okay, let's see. It's slightly more expensive. It actually costs us $30. So it's $23 for March 2024 to serve all the content. So this is all the static content. And probably you would have guessed it, most of our costs goes into the networking part, right? Because we serve static content toward users, and so we pay the egress fee out of the load balancer. So it's $21 only for mostly the network part, so serving the traffic itself. But the rest, Google Cloud Storage is 0.75. So somebody said 0.5, so you're not very far off, just to host the actual content itself. And then we use Google Cloud DNS to manage the DNS itself, so that's $68. And we use BigQuery for some analytics. And there is, I don't know why it included compute engine. We don't really use compute engine. We don't have a VM, actually. We don't really need it. So yeah, that's essentially it. We basically just have content. We create a new page, push it into Google Cloud Storage, and it's just like globally available within like 3 minutes. And our Google Cloud Load Balancers are global. So basically, wherever you connect from, you're going to be able to see the content. So that's the most kind of like, again, basic, stupid, whatever you want to call it, way of hosting a website. Just Google Cloud Storage, load balancers, end of the day. That's it. So if we switch back to the slides for a second. Now, if we want to do things a little bit more complicated, we have other options. So you can do compute engine, so you can run virtual machines, put a load balancer in front of them, and then host whatever dynamic website you have. You can also do GKE. I am gonna not show all of them. You can do App Engine. If you are familiar with App Engine, it's like our OG kind of like dynamic website hosting. If you or your kids uses Snapchat, it's mostly actually hosted on App Engine. When Snapchat as a company started, they did not have infrastructure engineers. They just have software engineers, and they just used App Engine to host the application itself. There are a bunch of other companies using it. But what I'm going to show you today is Cloud Run. I think Cloud Run is pretty cool. So Cloud Run is our runtime environment, containers, right? So you can put a container into Cloud Run, and then we'll run it for you. So if we switch to the demo for a second. So the basic way you can use Cloud Run is basically just run whatever container. So this is, I do this demo all the time because I think it's pretty interesting. So here what I'm doing is I'm deploying Nginx, and I'm actually just pulling Nginx from the internet. You see where it says -- image here? That's just like gonna pull Nginx from Docker Hub, right? So I'm starting it on port 80, and I'm deploying it to the US West 1. I think that's Dallas, the data center, and that's it. So if I run this, it should just like pull Nginx, deploy it into Google Cloud Run, and then give me a load balancer, right? So if I switch back here for a second, I can see that my Nginx server is coming, right? So it's been pulled. And then, yes, then it's deployed. So if I click on it, I have an URL here. I click on this URL, I have Nginx. Right? Like very simple, right? Again, super stupid, super simple. Now, if I want to do something more more complicated with Google Cloud Run, another thing also that I think, again, not a lot of people know is that you can combine Google Cloud Run with Google Cloud Load Balancers. So when you deploy a Cloud Run service, the load balancer's SSL certificate that gets created, that's the default one. But you can put your own load balancer in front of Cloud Run and then manage your own domain, do your own certificates, do Cloud Armor, block regions, do whatever you want, right? So I'm going to show you an example of how that can be done. But before I do that, one other cool feature of Google Cloud Run is the fact that you can build from source without having to build Docker containers. So Cloud Run supports containers. So you have to have a container, your application inside the container, and then you tell us where the container is, and we'll deploy it for you. But if you are like me, and you don't actually like to write Docker files, because I think Docker files are horrendous, so you can just do this. So let me go 1 second here. So if I go into Cloud Run, so I have my application. This is an AMP that we use for demonstration. It's called Zone Printer. I'm going to show you how the app looks like later. I can just do this. I can deploy my application called Zone Printer, and then in the -- source dot, I basically tell it I want to use the current folder as the source of my application. And what this will do, it will basically take all the code inside my folder, upload it to Google Cloud Storage, and then it will spin up a Google Cloud build job to build the actual container. So if I go to my console and look at Google Cloud build jobs, there is a job which is running. And so this job will build the container. So you might ask, how are we able to build containers without a Docker file? Well, we use something called buildpacks. It's an open source project. And buildpacks is a tool to be able to build basically containers without Docker files. And my application is written in Go. So it supports Go, Java, Python, Node.js, a bunch of applications. So it just basically figures out, it reads the folder, reads the code, analyzes it, and figures out how to build it. So my job is already finished. I can actually show you something else. For example, if I go to, let's say, if I go to secret, to artifact registry, because the container itself have been uploaded to artifact registry. So if I go here, I should find a container called cloud source deploy. Boom. Zone printer. So that's the one. That's the container that we just built right now. And the app should have already been pushed to Google Cloud Run, and it will just work. So let me open this. And yeah, so this just works, right? So this application specifically, what it does is that it tells you where the traffic is being served from. Because I deployed it to the US West 1 region, so that's the Dallas, Oregon region. And so basically it says, hey, I'm serving traffic out of the Dallas region. Now, when you are, again, a website developer or a web developer, one of the things you need is availability and high availability. So you need to be able to serve traffic to as many users as possible across the world with as many or as little latency as you can, right? And so one of the things you can do with Google Cloud Run is you can deploy your same exact website to multiple regions and just put a single load balancer in front of them and have a single point of entry to serve traffic to all your users, right? So I did that. I did that before I came here. So I deployed this application that we're looking at. I basically deployed it to 4 different regions. So the 4 in the bottom. So I deployed it to Europe West 1. That's in Belgium. Middle East. I think this is Saudi Arabia or Qatar. I don't remember. And then US East 1 and US West 1. So I deployed one on the East Coast, one on the West Coast, one in Europe, and one in the Middle East. And so I deployed all of this. So there are a few things I did with this application specifically. So if I click on any one of them, and first thing I'm going to notice is that this URL is not clickable, right? That's because when I deployed it with the option to say, I do not want the application to be exposed to the internet. I only want it to be exposed behind the load balancer. And that's essentially a flag in G-Cloud called the ingress rule. So here is an example. So this is how I deployed this application. Same way, G-Cloud deploy, blah, blah, blah. But I added -- ingress, internal, and cloud load balancing. What this feature will do, or what this flag will do, is that it will make the application only available inside the VPC. So only if you are inside the Google Cloud, you can reach it. Or if you are using a load balancer, which is what I'm going to do, in front of it, you can reach the application. So if I take this URL here and I try to open it, it's not going to work because the application is internal. So then what I can do is I can go to my load balancing configuration, and I can show you how I created a load balancer. So this is a very simple HTTPS load balancer, which has, again, a certificate. It has a bunch of interesting things. And if I scroll down to the backend, I see that I have 4 backends, and the backends are essentially the Cloud Run services. So each Cloud Run service is acting as a backend toward the load balancer. And so what our load balancers would do in that case, it would receive the traffic from the user, and it will forward it to the nearest region where the user is coming from, right? So then what I did also is I put a domain on it. So my domain is called, so this is, by the way, this all the code, I'm going to push it to my GitHub repository. So if you want to check it out later, you can. So I did all of this, and it's under this domain called zoneprinter.abdels.me. So if I load it, it tells me I am being served from the Dallas, Oregon region. I need to show you that I can actually get to it from a different environment or from a different region. Can we just switch to the slides for a second? Sorry about that. I should have told you earlier. We have an internal tool to switch region. I don't want to show you that. So that's essentially why I'm doing this. So let's go there. I will go here, and I will go to, let's say, France, for example. So basically now I'm just kind of like using a sort of like a VPN, if you want, to switch the region, just to show you that if I try to connect, for example, from Belgium, hopefully it will work. No, it's just working. OK, that's interesting. No, not there. Sorry about that. It should work here. Yeah, if I switch back to the demo for a second. Yes. So now I basically connected my laptop to Belgium, and then I am being served from the Belgium region. So that's, if I go here, That's essentially the Europe West 1 service, which is answering me, right? So then if I switch back to Saudi Arabia, it will be served from the Middle East. If I switch somewhere else, it will be served. If I am in New York, I will be getting the one on the East Coast. So, so yeah, that's essentially it. So load balancer, very simple. Behind it, I have multiple services. They all they all host the same application. That's essentially the equivalent of just like deploying your application multiple times, multiple replicas in multiple regions. And then once I have the load balancer in front of it, then I can do a lot of things. I can enable CDN. I can have login. I can do identity aware proxy, cloud armor, all that's cool stuff, right? So yes. Now, here is two things to say about Cloud Run. I just realized yesterday when I was coming here, I flew yesterday to Vegas, and I realized that on one thing we announced yesterday at this event is that now Google Cloud Run itself supports multi-region. So before Google Cloud Run, you could only deploy to one region, which is essentially what I did here. But now you can actually deploy to multiple regions. You can deploy the same service to multiple regions, which is even going to make this better, because now I don't have to run multiple pipelines to deploy the app to multiple regions. I can do one deployment and just target as many regions as I want, and then still put a load balancer in front of it and have the load balancer serve traffic for all the regions, right? The second thing is that Cloud Run itself is super cool. It has a lot of very cool features. So I was in Atlanta this week for a different conference, and I did a demo with Google Cloud Run where I showed one very, very simple, again, stupid, but very simple feature that a lot of people need. If you have an application that connects to a database or connects to an API, you usually have a password, right, or a secret. How do you store the secret? Where do you put it? Do you put it in code? Hopefully not. I hope that no one here is putting things in code, right? So actually, when I was preparing for the demo on Sunday, I pushed an API key to GitHub, and I received an email that says your API key was exposed. So Google Cloud Run has an integration with something called Secrets Manager. So Google Cloud Secrets Manager is our secrets manager. You can just push whatever you want to it, like code, passwords, API keys, all that stuff. So I have an app that I have deployed earlier. It's an app that talks to Hugging Face, the API. And so Hugging Face has, of course, a key. So I have a key which I generated. I already pushed that key to my secrets manager. So if I go gcloud secrets list, I should see that I have a key there called Hugging Face API. So that's my secrets. And then all I have to do basically is I have to run this. I have to deploy the application, say where is the image, the port. The last line is the interesting thing. Line 106 is the line that says update secret. And so what I'm doing is I am telling Google Cloud Run to go to Google Cloud Secrets Manager, pull the secret, and then add it to the container environment as an environment variable called Hugging Face API key, all capital, right? So yeah, Google Cloud Run will fetch the secret. Of course, before I do that, I had to create a binding policy to allow Google Cloud Run to pull the secrets. And yeah, that's it. So that basically should just work. If I go there, go back 1 second, and I have this application here called Java LLM. It's written in Java, so if I load it, it will load the actual application, hopefully. I should have loaded this morning because I think it has scaled down to 0. Since I didn't use it since yesterday. But if it doesn't work, you can believe me, it actually works. Yeah, it works. OK, cool. And then if I go, what is Google Kubernetes? Kubernetes engine. And then I do this. It will just talk to the Hugging Face API. It's using one of the models there, and then it will just give me an answer. Hopefully. So the reason I wanted to show this demo or this specific app is not only to show the integration with the Secrets Manager, right? Like, okay, well, you can integrate with Secrets Manager. That's kind of cool. But really, who really cares, right? So if I go here, okay, whatever. So I have my Secrets Manager. But what's interesting is the fact that, for example, this application itself is built using OpenAPI. And if you have used OpenAPI before, you know that OpenAPI has an interface for seeing the API endpoints. It's called the Swagger interface, right? So if I go here and do open API /UI, then I will be able to load the Swagger interface. Now, this is not something you want to expose to your users, right? Typically, this is something you want to keep internal for your developers, right? You don't want your users to see how the API definition behind the scene works. So what I can do with all the stuff I have demonstrated so far is if I put a load balancer in front of this application, I didn't do it, I'm not going to show it, but I'm just going to explain to you. I can hide this. I can just tell the load balancer only serve traffic from the actual domain, and if people try to go to /OpenAPI/UI, do not serve this, or maybe require authentication. So if I am a developer on this application, I need to authenticate to be able to load the Swagger API, or the Swagger UI, sorry. But if users are just connecting, they can only connect to the application itself, right? So this is one of the other interesting things you can do when you combine Cloud Run with load balancers. So with load balancers, you can just put whatever policy, and you can say hide this path, open this path, and do all sorts of random interesting things that you want to do. So that's essentially Google Cloud Run. The last thing I'm going to show you, again, we talked earlier about all the options, right? Compute engine, Kubernetes engine, Cloud Run, load balancers. VMware engine and cloud storage. The TLDR of all my presentation is that all these things support load balancers. So if you put load balancers in front of them, you can do a lot of interesting things like CDN, Cloud Armor, policies, blocking, allowing, authentication, all that things. So the last thing I'm going to show, which is, I think, another cool thing, is Firebase. So if you are Firebase, if you have, anybody here uses Firebase before? One person? Okay, few people. Okay. So if you don't know what Firebase is, it's a tool, it's a product that we have on Google Cloud, which mostly is used by people who does web and mobile development. But they do have something called Firebase hosting, which can allow you to host static websites, and it's pretty cool. So it's kind of similar to the one I showed earlier, the Google Cloud Storage option, but it has a slightly cooler UI, in my opinion. So this is my Firebase console. So I have already a project here called Next24. And if I go here to hosting, I've already pushed a static website and hosted it. And I have a custom domain in front of it. I'm going to show you in a second. But essentially, if I switch here, and if I go to Firebase, no, sorry, 1 second. Yes, so I have basically the same website as earlier, the static website running Hugo that I showed earlier, same idea. So if I do Hugo serve, I should be able to get like the localhost thing there. Okay, that works, nothing too fancy here. But what I can do is I can actually do the same thing I did earlier with Google Cloud Storage. I can just generate the static website with Hugo, and then I can push my code changes to Firebase using Firebase deploy as a command. So I already configured the Firebase command line, and I am inside the folder that contains the website, including the static website. So if I look here, I have that folder called public, right? So if I do Firebase deploy, it will just like take all the static content and upload it to Firebase hosting. That's not good. Ah, okay. I don't know what's happening. Okay. Interesting. Resolving hosting targets of a website with no site name or target name. They should. Maybe I should log in again. Okay, it's not important that I show it now. What's important is that yes, I have a Firebase website hosted with a custom domain, and yeah, they just have static websites on a Firebase domain. That basically acts or behaves the same way as any hosting website, like basically same as Google Cloud Storage, except that it's on Firebase. So I have 2 more things today to show you. I'm probably going to end a little bit earlier than expected, but that's fine. I have time for questions. So one thing, if you're doing websites, one thing you probably want to do is you might want to have like the dynamic part of your website running on top of like a compute environment, like whatever, VMs or Cloud Run, whatever. But sometimes you just have static content, and you don't need to put static content inside the VM. That's a waste of resources, right? So when you use Google Cloud Load Balancers, you can still have a single point of entry to your application, and then behind it, you can just put the static content on Google Cloud Storage or Firebase, put the dynamic content on any of the runtime environments we have, Compute Engine, Kubernetes Engine, App Engine, whatever, and then use the domain or the load balancer to map to say, okay, if people are trying to load CSS, images, HTML, you go to the storage buckets. If you're trying to talk to the actual application, you go to whatever backend you're running on. So this is the last example that I'm going to show you is this. So we have, this is something we call GSS or Jumpstart Solutions. So Jumpstart Solutions are basically a bunch of examples that you can, I'm trying to go back. How do you go back? Here. Jumpstart Solutions. So if you go here and you select Jumpstart Solutions, you have a bunch of examples of applications that are deployed or that are using some of our products. And then if I go to the one that I was trying to show today, deploying a dynamic website, if you scroll down, you will have a bunch of options. One of them is actually the example I was talking about earlier, using the combination of Firebase hosting and Cloud Run. So static content is on Firebase hosting, dynamic content is on Cloud Run. There is another example where everything is running in Cloud Run, and the last one is using a Java application. So if you haven't figured out yet, I am a wannabe Java developer, so that's why I talk a lot about Java. so it's using Java, and it runs on top of Google Cloud, Google GKE, Google Kubernetes Engine, and uses load balancers in front. So you can from here just go like get start for free, and then it will give you like a full interface to deploy it into a target GKE environment. I'm not going to show that today, but you get the idea. So this is just like a full example of how can you deploy a dynamic website into Google Cloud using basically 3 different ways. You can use Firebase hosting and Cloud Run alone, or GKE. And yeah, that's essentially it. I think that's all I have today. So if I switch back to the slides, I think I should probably have thank you notes somewhere, at some point. Yeah, so I didn't show this. There is like a bunch of things that we have announced in Google Cloud Google Cloud Run in 2024. Like you can do health checks, you can do CPU boost, you can integrate it with Google Cloud Deploy. You can do, it has security recommendations. I could probably have shown this actually. Let's see if I go here. Give me 1 second. I need to figure out what it is. Security. No. Okay, I don't have it enabled. Okay, that's fine. I don't have this enabled. No, I do. Yes. Can we switch back to my demo for a second? So there is a thing called Google Cloud Security Posture. We integrated that into GKE, but we also integrated it into Google Cloud Run. And if you go to your Cloud Run version, you go to the revisions, and then you go to the security tab, you'll be able to see that my application only has 2 high critical problems, so that's not too bad, and some medium ones and some low ones. So this is like scanning the container itself live, and it's scanning it all the time. So it's not only on push; it's continuous scanning for the container. So you'll be able to see straight from here. And if I click on one of those things, it will take me straight to the actual CVE, and it will also, I'm not sure. I think it will take you also to the actual line of code or the actual dependency where that CVE is. And so you'll be able to see it there. No? Oh, yeah, okay, whatever. So yeah, these are like CVEs inside the container itself. So this is OS CVEs, not part of the code itself. But if you have a critical vulnerability in your code application, you click on the vulnerability, it takes you straight into the actual code line where that vulnerability is, whether it's dependency that you are pulling or whether it's like a library or whatever. So that's integrated into Google Cloud Run. So if we switch back to the slides, 1 second. So yeah, so a bunch of integrations plus whatever I showed earlier, like the secret manager, passwords, all the things. We have that up. So yeah, health checks is quite cool. So this is essentially allows you to, if your application doesn't serve health check on /, you can set a custom health check page, a custom health check path And you can also set a liveness probe, and you will be able to tell Cloud Run to wait until your application is ready to load code. The thing is also with like container-based applications is that containers themselves, they start very fast, but your application inside the container might not, because sometimes what could have happened is that your application starts and needs to like load some data, connect to an API, connect to a database, and while that's happening, your application is technically not ready. So you can customize how do you define your application as being live or as being ready with health check ports and liveness probes. We also added something called CPU boost. So if your application requires like a more CPU during the startup time on Go Cloud Run, you can just enable CPU boost, and we will give it more headroom to be able to speed up or to start very fast. So this is actually already there. Because I do Java applications, this is very important. If you're a Java developer, you know that like during the start time of a JVM, it takes so much CPU. Talked about GKE. Yeah, of course, GKE, we have the autopilot version, so you can do GKE yourself as like the standard mode, or GKE autopilot is pretty cool. And talked about Firebase, and I think I'm going to head back to the last one. Yes, yeah, that's it. That's all I have for you today. I would appreciate if you give me some feedback. If you go to the app of Google Cloud Next, you'll be able to like start the talk, and thank you.